Welcome to Civilization Jihad Awareness, the show where we shine a little bit of light on all that misinformation that's out there and all that stuff the major media networks seem to miss. So let's talk really quickly about where the term Civilization Jihad comes from. It comes from the explanatory memorandum that was used in the 2007 and 2008 trial in the U.S. versus the United States versus the Holy Land Foundation et al. Trial. This document, I'll tell you, this document is a mind blower, and the term Civilization Jihad would never be known unless one policeman did his work, and that's just the amazing truth of it. But let's talk about what this one paragraph from this thing called the explanatory memorandum says. It's a simple thing. It says, the process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all that the word means. The Ikhwan must understand, the Ikhwan means brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad. In eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Without this level of understanding, we are not up to this challenge and have not prepared ourselves for jihad yet. It is a Muslim's destiny to perform jihad and work wherever he is and wherever he lands until the final hour comes. And there is no escape from that destiny except for those who choose to slack. But would the slackers and the mujahideen be equal? Well, today we are going to cover a few things that will just freaky blow your mind. Today, we have Nonie Darwish. She'll be joining us around 6:30, and she has an article that is outstanding that we absolutely have to talk about. And when we get to this point, you're going to hear me kind of excited because, first of all, I think her work it's a short piece, but it's monumental. It's empowering. But the first thing I'm going to share with you tonight is an article that I wrote this week. Just published it on the 12th, which is Monday, and I'm going to post it again in the chat room. Go there if you want. And this article, I'm just going to read this article and take it as you will. This is part of a paper I recently wrote. I'm enjoying my classes at Henley Putnam. I am learning a ton of new stuff, and really thankful for the opportunity to go. So let me tell you what I wrote this week. Former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates was recently asked in a Fox News interview, which was on May 23rd, 2017, about his opinion of the Muslim Brotherhood and if they should be labeled a foreign terrorist organization. His response speaks volumes. I think of the Muslim Brotherhood in the context of science fiction shapeshifters, whatever they think they want you to look. Let me read that again. They will look like whatever they think they want you to look at them, to look like, okay? We have seen the Muslim Brotherhood actually come to power. It put the lie to all their claims about being a, quote, moderate force, was accepting of democratic norms, if you will. Now the other aspect of its Hamas is a direct offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, is generally regarded as the ideological forerunner of both Al-Qaeda and ISIS, Daesh. And so it seems to me, by and large, going back to the old saying, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, maybe it's a duck. I love this quote. Secretary Gates' concerns regarding the Muslim Brotherhood is of particular interest for the intelligence community today. Poole, in his 2013 article, points out that the past president invited persons to the White House who were implicated by federal prosecutors in financing terrorism, one of them being Mohammed Majid, who was then the president of the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA, a known entity of the Muslim Brotherhood in North America. Poole notes in his article that materials containing terminology, Muslim Brotherhood, and other Muslim terms related to Sharia and Jihad were purged from the DHS and FBI libraries in 2012 and earlier. Poole noted that this purge allowed for certain individuals to gain access to the White House on a daily basis, naming one of them as being Salam al-Mariyati, president of the Muslim Public Affairs Council, who had previously been recommended by President Clinton to a Congressional Terrorism Commission, but had it withdrawn after his comments in support of Hamas and Hezbollah. So this guy supported Hamas and Hezbollah, and even Clinton would not take him. But President Obama appointed al-Mariyati to be a member of the official U.S. delegation to the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the Conference on Human Rights held in Vienna in 2012. Former FBI Director James Comey confirmed this purge in his testimony before the Senate Committee on the Judiciary Hearing and FBI Oversight, which is May 3, 2017. He said, "In the previous Congress, I chaired a hearing on the willful blindness of Obama administration to radical Islamic terrorism, where testimony from a whistleblower at the Department of Homeland Security that described a purge DHS had undergone of editing or deleting over 800 records at DHS to remove references to radical Islam, to the Muslim Brotherhood, and the purge indeed was the word used by the White House that directed DHS to conduct that purge. The above purge is mentioned as relational to allowing persons to be appointed to positions they would not previously have been allowed due to public endorsements of entities classified as foreign terrorist organizations. Some of those who visited the White House regularly and later became employees are children and grandchildren of those who are or were Muslim Brotherhood leaders in North America. CARE, one of the entities that petitioned the DHS and FBI to censor its materials, was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator in the USA versus Holy Land Foundation trial. How is it possible so many changes were made, allowing a pass for those I got to go back a little typos here. How is it possible for so many changes that were made to allow people to work, to destroy America from within, to destroy records that would allow even more infiltration? Perhaps this is one of the questions former Director of FBI James Comey should answer while under oath. Personally, I would love to have seen him answer this question. How is it possible you served as a director of the FBI and these purges happened under your watch? How do you call that being ethical? And then somehow these people get appointed to positions of power and you do nothing? Did you advise the president in threats to the United States? That they endorsed groups that were threats? And if that's so, if you did inform them, what was the president's response? To me, those are very important questions. I have real issues when we start to get rid of, let's try to put this the right way, we start to hide security risks. We start to delineate security risks just because a president, regardless of who he is, white, black, Hispanic, purple, green, yellow, if he's saying we should allow security risks to our country to work in the White House, we've got problems. I don't care who he is. Something's wrong with that president. He may be acting treasonous if that's the case. We need to do something. And in the case that we're talking about, it should have been done. James Comey, to me, your dereliction, you should have been removed from office ages ago for dereliction of duty. Now, I want to get to a few big articles before I invite on Nonie Darwish, like she's coming on 6:30, so we'll hit some big news articles. And this one still blows my mind, but you will know from hearing this title immediately what city we're talking about. It's published by the Detroit Free Press. written by Tressa Baldas. It's published June 8th. The title, Feds, Dearborn man was a trained bomb maker for terror group. 1 week after the FBI raided a Dearborn home in the middle of the night, a new terrorism case surfaced in New York on Thursday involving two men. A Dearborn man who allegedly received bomb-making training from a terror group and another man who allegedly plotted attacks on New York. Samir al-Debek, 37, of Dearborn, and Ali Karani, 32, of the Bronx, were arrested a week ago and charged with training and working on behalf of Hezbollah, a U.S. designated terrorist organization based in Lebanon. Hezbollah, while based in Lebanon, they're forgetting something. That's an Iranian terror group. The FBI bomb technicians have assessed that al-Debek received extensive training as a bomb maker, the Justice Department said. The charges were unsealed in Manhattan federal court on Thursday, 1 week after federal agents raided a Dearborn home in what they described as an operation involving national security. Sources familiar with the case tell the Free Press the raid involved al-Debek, who was arrested in Livonia that same day. That's not too far from me. And subsequently charged with numerous crimes, though none involving plotting attacks in New York. In December, another Dearborn man was sentenced to 5 years in prison for seeking to join Hezbollah in Lebanon. Also in 2014, in a separate case, a former Dearborn resident was killed in Syria while fighting for Hezbollah. According to criminal complaints unsealed Thursday in Manhattan's U.S. District Court, al-Debek and Karani were recruited by Hezbollah operatives and received military-style training, including in the use of rocket-propelled grenade launchers, machine guns, and possibly more, in support of the group's terrorist mission. There are YouTube, and there's other links from this site, so if you go to the Detroit Free Press and you type in Dearborn man was a trained bomb maker, you can find more of this article. Karani allegedly conducted surveillance of potential targets in the U.S., including military and law enforcement facilities in New York. The charges announced today reveal once again that the New York City region remains a focus of many adversaries, demonstrated as alleged in this instance by followers of sophisticated and determined organization with a long history of coordinating violent attacks on behalf of Hezbollah, said William Sweeney, who was the assistant director in charge of the New York FBI office. According to the Justice Department, al-Debek was arrested in Livonia on June 1st on numerous charges and is in custody in New York, along with Karani. His attorney could not be reached for comment. This is a little scary, people. This is, when I say Livonia, I mean, that's on our that's on my daily news. I mean, if you turned on our local news, you would hear that name. It's a local, that's how close it is. It's on every night. Not for something bad. It's just, kids playing basketball, whatever. That's how local it is for us. And it's kind of a surprise. We're talking about Dearborn and connections here, not too far from Rochester, New York. And that's a scary thing. So let's talk about Daniel Greenfield's articles this week. He has some whoppers. But one of them that I particularly liked was the assault on March against Sharia are a First Amendment threat. Now, I had some fun with this because he puts things simply. And I say that because he does it all in a few paragraphs. That is an unusual man who can sum this up so succinctly. And I really have to say I appreciate that. It's the title. This is Daniel Greenfield, June 11th, and this is on Front Page Magazine. The article starts, if you want a reality check on just how disturbing the situation has become a year ago, a rally against Sharia would have been largely ignored by the media. It would not, however, have been met with street violence. Now the left has normalized street violence in a response to conservative gatherings. The ugliness was predictably worse in more left-wing cities. Ted Wheeler in Portland tried to stop Act for America's rally. The protest indeed couldn't go forward, and that is tragically telling. There's no free speech in Portland. Moving the rally to Seattle didn't help either. Leftist street violence followed it there. Leftist violence exploded at a number of March Against Sharia protests, and this has now become routine. The peaceful protest is becoming extinct, and the driving force is left-wing radicalism, and the complicity of the left is now in radicalizing its own abuses, while the media provides political cover. The First Amendment is being further eroded. Obama attacked freedom of religion. His thugs have now gone to war against the freedom of assembly. Let's talk about that freedom of assembly in light of the attack today. What attack? There was a shooting today. Congressman was shot. And the guy who did the killing, the attempted murder, was killed by some good officers. And the nation owes them a debt of thanks for sadly having to pull a trigger and put to death another leftist Democrat for taking things into their hands to stop simple things like playing baseball. And the crime that the people had committed, that he tried to kill, the crime was that they're Republican. He was caught asking questions beforehand, and what the question was, are those Democratic congressmen or are they Republican? And he took a shot and attempted to kill the people there. I do not know how many people were killed, how many people were injured at this. I just was kind of mind blown. Now, we're at the 6:20 mark, so I'm going to read one more news story, and then I'll get into my thing on who Nonie Darwish is. So I have one more news story that I'm going to read. I'm trying to think which one. How about this one? Libyan Security Committee calls U.S. Muslim leader a terrorist. Wait. U.S. Muslim leader called by who? Libya. This is interesting. Now, Investigative Project on Terrorism does an outstanding work exposing things. Now, what I think is kind of humorous is if you go to if you go to the Investigative Project on Terrorism, it's investigativeproject.org, and you look, and this will be on the news feed, you'll find a picture of the person who's being named, and none other than former vice presidential candidate with this man who's being named as a terrorist. Now, pay attention. A prominent Muslim American political activist is included on a list of 75 terrorists issued by a Libyan parliamentary committee. Assam Omayesh is a former president of the Muslim American Society and remains a prominent figure at the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Falls Church, Virginia. He is among 75 people of the Libyan House of Representatives Defense and National Security Committee labeled Friday as enemies. Libya's government remains fragmented, with the House of Representatives based in a city called Tobruk. It is considered closely aligned with Egypt. Omayesh is the 29th name listed on the terror list and is described as an international member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Another American ally, Abu Zaid Kook, appears just as Omayesh, also identified as an international Muslim Brotherhood member. Omayesh blasted the move in a statement on his Facebook page saying, "My name had unjustly and falsely been placed on the so-called list of supporters of terrorism." He protested Saturday to Virginia. U.S. Senator Tim Kaine, the 2016 Democratic vice presidential nominee, and plans to try meeting more members of Congress. Wait a minute. This idiot met with him. Kaine met with him After he got his name on a list, the one thing he did not deny was that he is an international member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Isn't that a question right now before the Senate and the Congress, whether we should declare the Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist group? And Tim Kaine, you're actually meeting with him? You don't deserve the title senator. You can't vote if you're going to affiliate with a group of people that we have to discuss as being terrorists. Talk about stupidity. Hard to get any higher than that. God. Omeish wants the committee's leaders, legally prosecuted for fraud, slander, and defamation to obtain a judgment. Where does he think this is? You can't do this if you're in another country, you idiot. Omeish, this is just insane. So what kind of court are you going to go to? This is hilarious to me. I want to know what you're going to do because this is hilarious. How are you going to charge him with these things? Please tell us. It's another country, you fool. Omeish formerly served as, keep this in mind, Muslim American Society, which insiders have acknowledged is the Muslim Brotherhood's overt arm in the United States. I think it was Samuel Arian that said everybody knows part of the Muslim Brotherhood. It may have been another one, another Muslim Brotherhood person who came out and said that. I have to double check that. But it's been said by more than one. It may have been Alamoudi. It's hilarious because there's been several people who come out and talked about the Muslim American Society. So let's get going. One more piece on this. The AMC was founded in part by Ahmad Abu Saud, who helped Hassan al-Banna create the Brotherhood in Egypt. The Washington Post reported in 2004, FBI officials have long suspected that IIIT housed leading Brotherhood officials in the United States. IIIT, that's the International Institute of Islamic Thought. So you're starting to hear the connections. Let's think about this, people. Are they a terrorist group? If you ask me, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So let's pay attention. We have Nonie Darwish coming to join us in a few minutes. Nonie Darwish is the author of The Devil We Don't Know, The Dark Side of Revolutions in the Middle East, and another book called Now They Call Me Infidel, While I Renounce Jihad for America, Israel, and the War on Terror. Journalism, a degree in sociology and anthropology from the American University in Cairo. Ms. Darwish is outspoken advocate for progress, minority rights, human and women's rights in the Middle East. Ms. Darwish was born in Cairo, Egypt, and raised in the Muslim faith. Her father headed the Egyptian military intelligence in Gaza and the Sinai in the 1950s, when Gaza was under Egyptian control. And he spearheaded the Fadain operations against Israel under the leadership of Egyptian President Nasser. Her father was assassinated in Gaza in 1956 when Nonie was 8 years old. In her biography, Nonie Darwish recalls how she, like most of her peers, were taught hatred, jihad, vengeance, and retaliation. She describes the culture behind the jihad and martyrdom and the impact of polygamy and oppression of women on Muslim society. She also recounts the journey that led her to renounce the jihad. Today, Ms. Darwish is married, the mother of 3, and living in the U.S. In 2004, she founded Arabs for Israel. And you can find that at arabsforisrael.com. She lectures extensively on college campuses in the U.S. and Canada, and she's been a guest on CNN. Yes, that was CNN, that fake news station, or is that Clinton News Network, whatever you want to call that. Fox News, MSNBC, another fake news channel, Al Arabiya TV, and other major media outlets. Her second book, Cruel and Unusual Punishment, The Terrifying Global Implications of Islamic Law, which came out in 2009, is a sociological analysis of the impact of Sharia Islamic, which is Islamic law, on interpersonal relationships, female relationships, family, and Muslim society. She has a new book out. I'm going to have her share that information, and I'm just going to check. I'm not sure if this is her in the room or not. I have to double check. 501. Okay, the last 4 digits are 1231. Uh-oh. Having problems with the mic skipping in and out, and I cannot control that at this point. Is that any better? Is that any better now? Just going to check. Hopefully this is her. Hello. Is this Nonie? Hello? Hello? All right. Not her. Well, she's supposed to come join us at 6:30, which is probably a few seconds away, and I will double check and see what happens there. While we're waiting, sorry about that. I wish I could fix the mic issue. It should not be cutting in and out. The reason I had some fighting to get into. I don't know what it is with Blog Talk Radio lately with me. Almost every time I start the show, I now have to restart my computer. So this is a new fight for me. So while we're waiting, I just read her. That's what I was telling. I was talking about the shooting in D.C. That's what I was talking about. I read a lot of articles on it, and I was kind of amazed for the fact that when I listened to her what was happening in D.C., it was a targeted shooting by a Democrat who worked for none other than the Burn. Oh, who? He was a campaign volunteer for Bernie. So right now, with all that's going on, the left seems to think it's okay to kill Republicans. And yet they're going to blame none other than the gun. It's not the Democrats' fault. It's the gun that was in their hand. Oh, my God, the gun made them kill somebody. Yes, and that's what they're saying. Just as in Orlando, they are now blaming the guns rather than the idiots who pulled the guns. Incredible. How is there any difference? Guys, it takes someone to pull a trigger to make the gun go off. So let's think about this. There's our no-brainers, people. We have to start thinking about this. And I think we have Nonie here. I'm just going to see if this is her. Hello, is this Nonie Darwish?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, welcome to the show. I read your bio a few seconds ago. I'm so glad to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Well, you're welcome, and it's a pleasure really to be with you.
This is a rather unique forum in that we have internet. We're a global patriot radio. We have reach as far as around the world. We have one of our people that's on the show is from Israel. I go through the whole list. We have Canadian hosts. We have some UK people working with us, and it's an amazing network of great individuals who are devoted to telling the truth about not just Islam, but what's going on as far as jihad today. So I'm glad to have you on.
Jihad is a culture of terror, and it has become so normal in the Middle East that the so-called moderate Muslims think that terror is normal, and they don't fight it anymore. So the terrorists are getting more and more brazen in what they're doing. And this kind of culture of terror is moving to the United States and the West. And some politicians in Europe are telling their citizens, get used to it. This is going to be our new normal.
That's the insanity which your article covers. That's just crazy. So
totally.
Yeah. Like I was going to say, your article. This is everybody needs to go and read this article. And I posted it. It's just above the chat room window where you go up a little above it, and you'll find the article of Gatestone Institute. It's titled "Accept Islamic Terror as the New Normal," and it has a really fascinating. What kills me is how this information is so valuable that you put in here, and one of those has to do with what you described as their common use of a tool. Can you?
Yes.
Well,
terrorism is a tool used by Islamic law to keep citizens, controlling citizens through terror. And there is several doctrines under Islam that promote terror. And jihad, the concept of the doctrine of jihad, promotes terror. And there's another doctrine that I mentioned in my article, and it's called in Arabic tarhib wa targhib, means terrorizing and luring. And this doctrine is an Islamic doctrine that is totally acceptable, and it's talked about on Arab TV, and books are written about it by prominent Islamic leaders, and they are training Muslims people who do dawah, and the word dawah means to preach, to Islam, and they are training them to use dawah, to use this doctrine of terror and lure, and they even tell them use the lure first. So show the nice side of what Islam can be at the beginning, and then move towards the terror. And if you read the books and what's written on this doctrine by Muslim leaders, and it's an old doctrine in Islam, you will truly understand what the value system that is being taught. It's all about using terror and using lure. And by lure, I'll give you an example of lure in Islam. If you go do jihad and kill the enemies of Allah, you're going to go to heaven, and we're going to give you 72 virgins. And that's very exciting for some Muslim men who never see a woman's hair or ankle, because everything is segregated. So they are luring them, the jihadists, with promises of women in heaven, up to 72 and more. And then, as soon as the men start preparing themselves for jihad, then the other side of Islam, the terror, comes out. And then they preach, if you leave the war duty, the jihad duty, you will be executed. You're going to be a traitor to Islam. So any man who doesn't want to do jihad automatically becomes an enemy of Islam and a traitor and apostate. And Islam is the only religion that allows killing of apostates. In fact, it not only allows it, but it forgives anybody who kills an apostate. It's clearly stated in Islamic law, which some Muslims are preaching in America as a religious right, that those who kill apostates will not be prosecuted. And that is why I cannot visit any Islamic country. I cannot visit my country of origin, Egypt. I can't. You know why? I'm not afraid of the government. The government is not going to arrest me. I'm afraid of anybody on the street who will perform his Sharia duty to kill an apostate. And then some of the police who believe in Islam will just ignore it, look the other way, and claim that she was killed by a robber or something. So it's rule through terror, and it is mainstream Islamic teaching. Lure and terror. Lure them with women in heaven, lure them with heaven, and then terrorize them from leaving the war zone without killing the enemies of Allah. And this
You mentioned in your article Salman al-Auda on Al Jazeera TV how he had said he has a show called Sharia in Life, and he recommended using extremes to exaggerate reward and punishment, morally and materially, in both directions. And the use of terror under this doctrine, he said, is a legitimate Sharia obligation. That's scary.
Exactly. It's almost like a KGB tactics, but wrapped in a religious wrapping. This is on Al Jazeera, by the way. He is a TV personality. He is not. Salman al-Auda is a preacher. He's a sheikh on Islamic TV on Al Jazeera, and he is a respected Islamic leader. And he goes on, but he didn't invent that doctrine, by the way. That doctrine existed in Islam. He's just reading that doctrine and agreeing with it and promoting it as a duty, And he recommends using those two extremes to exaggerate, to reward and lure and then on the other hand, if you don't comply, then you start using the other extreme, which is terrorizing and using violence, using humiliation, using subversion, using threats. I lived in such a society, by the way. That's where I grew up. I was born and raised a Muslim. And
you write also. Yeah. This is incredible. One of the things you go on about in this article is the carrot stick technique. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? How the recruiters use that?
Exactly. And this doctrine of lure and terror is actually used by jihadist recruiters. They are, recruiters to convert to Islam, and then they start with, do the da'wah. The da'wah, it means to preach Islam, to get people to convert to Islam. And they are trained by Islam, by normal, regular Muslim preachers. They are in training to use this doctrine of using it on the human psyche to get the best kind of response by using lure and terror. And it is to get the ultimate benefit for Islam. And the West doesn't want to pay attention. This concept, it's actually in the Quran itself, and it's discussed by many, many Islamic leaders. This is not radical Muslims who preach this. This preacher uses this doctrine to do da'wah, which is proselytizing to non-Muslims. This is a training course into how to bring others to Islam. This is a training course. Use lure with, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, and they give you respect, and you promise heaven. And my father died in this jihad. My whole life is a victim I hate to call myself victim, but my whole life was ruined by this doctrine.
Can you tell us? Can you tell us a little about? I'm getting kind of excited hearing a little bit about your history, but
exactly.
tell us something about how you personally experienced this. I guess carrot stick, or I think another way you put it was pleasure and pain.
Use lure and pleasure, pain and terror. Those two extremes. I lived under this kind of upbringing. You know that Arab children are brought up with extreme pride and extreme shame. The culture of this is another aspect of Arab culture that reflects this doctrine, which is the doctrine of lure and terror. It's a culture that relies heavily on heavy shaming and then heavy pride. If a child says, "I'm going to go to jihad," you give him all the pride, all the respect, and then if you say, "I want to live in peace with Jews," then they put you down and humiliate you. Do you know that one of the 99 names of Allah is the humiliator? So
that one I did not know.
Yeah, the carrot and stick. The carrot and stick. The carrot is giving you a lot of pride. So it doesn't have to be. That's why if you go to Arab jails, it's all torture. It's all torture. Sharia law, it's all about torture. Cutting limbs, whipping, beheading. This is Sharia law, and Muslims, the far left in America are telling the American people, don't criticize Sharia. This is their religious right. A few days ago, there were marches around America against Sharia. And you know what the leftists were saying? They were saying, speaking against Sharia is hate speech. So speaking about this doctrine of terror and lure is hate speech.
I don't consider their reasoning logical. Anybody who wants to talk, when I read Sharia and it says that there is a penalty for murder, well, the penalty is basically that person gets their life forfeited. What the exception to the rule is a Muslim for killing a non-Muslim. That is word for word. So how can my speaking against that be a problem? That's insane.
Exactly. Not only that, if you criticize anything about Islam, you have committed blasphemy. You have to be killed. The extreme physical abuse and mental abuse of Islam is so obvious. Just walk in the Middle East. I have lived there till I was 30 years old. Walk in the Middle East and look how people are so angry and distrustful of each other. This is the result of life under such extreme doctrine of lure and terror. It's in everything.
So would you say that these Muslims in let's say Europe and America who are considered, quote, moderates, are they like Muslims in name only? Are they really, quote, moderate? Do they really understand Islam or knowledgeable about it?
I'll tell you, the word moderate Muslim was created in the West. I lived for 30 years in the Middle East, never heard of the word moderate Muslims. We are obedient to Sharia. We thought jihad was an obligation that some Muslims do, and we have to support them. When we came to America, immigrants started moving to the West. So the West was too. They couldn't accuse all Muslims of being supporting this theory. So they created this distinction between the people who actually do the terror, who are called jihadists, and jihadists are the adored people in the Middle East. They are the most highly respected. Suddenly, the West is calling them terrorists. So the moderate Muslim is standing, doesn't know what to do. When I was in my country, they were the adored people. And we come to America, and suddenly they are killing everybody, and people are calling them terrorists. So wake up. The West should wake up.
I was recently in Europe. I visited Paris, Berlin, and Stockholm, and I saw the growing numbers of Muslims coming into the country. Many of them West Africans. Some people claiming to be Syrian amongst them, but the one thing I found that was fascinating.
Many coming from Central Africa all the way to North Africa through Libya. They take, and the Mediterranean is such a small lake practically, so they go from from all over the Middle East. They go and they cross that little lake called the Mediterranean, and they go to Italy, and they're welcomed in many countries in Western Europe. And then the Syrians and the Iraqis are practically herded from the war zone towards Europe, and I have no doubt that they are herded to conquer the West. Totally. Because if you look at the geographic area of the Islamic world, it's from Morocco all the way to Indonesia, from in Turkey all the way to Sudan in the south. It is an area that is larger in size than all of Europe. And why are they going to Europe then? Why don't they have a huge area called the Islamic world where they can happily, live under Sharia law? Why should they go to Western Europe where Sharia law is not the law? So the West is not asking these questions. But an infidel like me, a former Muslim like myself, is telling you that. Why? Why the West is not asking that question? Saudi Arabia has a whole city, a tent city that can house over 14 million people in air-conditioned tents, and they have not taken one refugee from Syria or Iraq. But the West is so divided. The West is not having babies anymore because they are living for today and having fun. So they're not having babies anymore. So politicians in the West need to import workers and laborers, and they're importing Muslims who are breeding very fast, and the West is not having babies. And they are promoting abortion. And so the West and the Muslim world is in a period of marriage made in hell.
That's a good way to put it. When I was in Germany, this is the one that kills me. Our interpreter, my audience has heard this story before, our interpreter believed that German society needed to be replaced because it was anti-Semitic. But he could not grasp that he was replacing it with more anti-Semitic people. And that was just mind-blowing.
Yeah. I don't think the West is proud of their culture anymore. They're not proud of their biblical values. They don't even care about their freedom anymore. And that's not strange. There are many nations in history that were obliterated because they were fed up of freedom. And I don't think it's just guilt. I think they're tired of freedom. They want to be the left want a population that should surrender everything to the government, all their wealth and obedience to the government, and so the government takes care of them. And I think Islam is a perfect religion for this kind of mentality, because Islam wants nothing but obedience. Obedience through terror.
They can't even critically they can't even critically examine the Quran. They can't. I mean, you'll hear about textual criticism of the Bible, where scholars get together and discuss pieces, and but they can't really do that with the Quran, because you're not allowed to question what other people who have said, back in 700, and then there's a hierarchy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's totally. And I wrote my brand new book, Wholly Different, Why I Chose Biblical Values Over Islamic Values. And my book is just details the huge differences. The values of the West and the values of Islam are the mirror opposite to one another. For instance, we're all sinners is a biblical value. It's a biblical statement. In Islam, they are all sinners. We are Muslims. We have to fix them because they're sinners. They even admit that in their Bible, that they're sinners. And we are Muslims, and we're going to fix them, whether they like it or not. And if they don't like it, we're going to terrorize them. Under Islam, under the Bible, Jesus died for us. In Islam, we must die for Allah. There are several verses in the Quran that encourage Muslims to go kill. So to be a good Muslim, you have to go die, kill and get killed for Allah. Why? Because Allah, the God of Islam, has human enemies. And I explain all of that in detail in my book, Wholly Different. So one God tells you to love your enemies, which is the God of the Bible, and another God called Allah tells you to go kill his enemies, his human enemies. The Bible tells us that we are not in a war with flesh and blood. In Islam, we are literally in a war with flesh and blood.
You have a good. That's a really good question. In fact, one of the people in the chat room just proposed a question on what you're talking about. He wants to know, how does Islamic theology deal with the problem of evil? If it's possible that Allah is good, how can he be good if he creates evil?
Yeah, absolutely. The concept of evil and sin is totally different in Islam. And that's a great question, because I answer that question in my book. I have a whole chapter called The Sin Factor. What is considered sin in the Bible is totally different from what's considered sin in Islam. Islam violated all the 10 commandments. Muhammad killed with his own hands. Muhammad robbed, he raped. So the 10 commandments have all been violated under Islam. So the question about evil and sin is, in Islam, sin is to insult Muhammad. That's sin, and that's why you have to be killed if you insult Muhammad. But you kill the enemies of Allah is okay.
It's an interesting place to go.
That's why I wrote my book. I'm speaking at my own risk. I cannot go, I'm telling you, I cannot go visit 54 Muslim countries anymore, because I'm speaking openly about the dirty little secrets of Islam. Yeah, for instance, I'll give you another example. In the Bible, you are supposed to, self-control is a very important thing in changing yourself. This is a biblical value. In Islam, you have to change others. It's not self-control, It's controlling others. That's the value. How you can control others, how you can kill others, how you can change others. Not changing yourself.
And in the Christian world, you work on self-control, and your self-control is supposed to influence others.
Exactly. The truth will set you free is a biblical value. In Islam, lying for the benefit of Islam is an obligation. Vengeance is mine, the Lord says in the Bible. In Islam, vengeance is prescribed for Muslims. When I was a Muslim, I thought God gave me the right to do vengeance on His behalf.
It's a good point.
This produces two kinds of societies. The Bible produces a society that has a degree of trust between people, and that's why civilization can rise. Islam, there is total distrust. The Bible tells us, love your enemies. In Islam, hate Allah's enemies. Never make peace with them. There is no forgiveness of Allah's enemies in Islam. You can't forgive your enemies. Do you know that under Islamic law, a Muslim head of state has to rule by Sharia and has to do jihad against all non-Muslim nations? A Muslim leader who doesn't want to do that will be killed. And that's why Sadat was killed, because he actually made peace with the enemies of Allah, the Jews in Israel. Nobody knows why Sadat was killed.
It's pretty actually factual there, and I mean, even his bodyguards stood away to allow that assassination took place. I mean, I remember as a kid watching this and going to school the next day, and the teachers I had talking about why did his bodyguards move away, and that explains it right there. He violated principles of Sharia. He made a pact with the Jewish people,
with
the enemies of Allah. Yeah, and that is
violated Sharia law.
Forbidden under Sharia, so he got the judgment. And that's that revenge that you're talking about that is commissioned by Allah. It's pretty. Here's the question I have for these intelligence community people, these persons who work in FBI, CIA, whatever, in whatever country they're in. Why can't they simply read the Sharia, read the Quran, read the Hadith, and see why they're doing things instead of telling people, "Oh, we can't figure it out. I don't know why they did it." It's so.
You know, I wrote the first book about Sharia in English, and it's called Cruel and Usual Punishment. That's the first book written to the American people about Sharia, to explain it in common sense language. And it's called Cruel and Usual Punishment. And then I wrote, this February, my new book came out, and it's comparison of the values of Islam with the values of the Bible. You know why I wrote it? Because I was, we all hear the words that, all these religions are the same. They have the same God. They're all Abrahamic religions. They don't know that Islam came 600 years after Christ, not to uphold the Bible, but to discredit it. It came as a rebellion against the Bible. Islam came to reject the Bible. It's a counter-revolution of this wonderful biblical revolution that gave us the civilization that we live under today. Islam came to counter it, because it has all the opposite values against it.
It's a good way to put it. I'm talking with a friend lately about where did their concept of Christianity come from, and my background being I studied to be a pastor first, and then went into other things such as teaching. So my knowledge is of Christian history more than most the average person, and from Max Ed and I have actually been talking back and forth. He's another host. He does Thursday night show, and he's a really intelligent guy. And the thing that we've been talking about is even from the creation story on, their concepts of Judaism and Christianity are from an old heresy called Gnosticism. There is no what I would call term. There's nothing really orthodox, nothing regular that you can pull right out of the Christian faith that Islam really endorses, besides the fact that they do tell you should read, the Bible's okay if you read some parts of it, which kills me. Yeah, go read the Gospels. Read the Gospels and learn how Islam is wrong. But no, you can't do that. But yes, you can, because it's endorsed. This is some of the insanity of their...
What you're saying exactly. These are the biblical values, like Christianity values coexistence. Islam does not want to coexist. Islam wants to replace. And that's why whenever Islam goes into a country, they want to, take the churches and convert them into mosques. They don't want to go build another mosque, a mosque next to the church. No, they want to replace.
And that's a good point. In I was out in Minnesota, and one of the churches out there, they bought a big church, and they turned that church into a mosque. Of course, they destroyed whatever crosses were on the building first. Yeah, and they're doing that in Syracuse, New York now.
They did it legally. They bought the property.
Yes.
And when in the old days when Islam conquered Egypt, a lot of people don't know that Egypt used to be a Christian nation for 600 years.
Yes.
After Christ. And 600 years after Christ, in the 7th century, Islam conquered Egypt, and they converted a lot of the churches into mosques. You know how they did it? They put the pastor upside down in front of his flock and told them, if you don't convert this church into a mosque, we're going to cut his limbs. It was pure terror. Pure terror.
And I'll tell people, if you want to read more on this terrorism in history like this, I tell people to pick up Altaberry History, the series of Altaberry's histories. I'm going through that. I'm in the midst of a couple books I'm working on, and one of them is off an article I wrote a ways back on the Hish, or the Secret Islamic Doctrine of Migration, and how that comes into history, and heavily using Islamic sources for it. But there's so much in these histories that it's insane. They have real plans where they walk in and they destroy through threats, terror, fear, whole communities. People don't understand. Okay, let's even just looking at. Let's take a look at the Philippines recently. A couple hundred people take over a part of the city that controls the electronic grid. They're going to try and control your ability to receive certain services, so you simply submit. I have another question for you from the people listening. We have a chat room, which is kind of cool, so they're able to communicate with questions. So here's another one. What is your view of the war against the Coptic Christians in Egypt today? Does Dimitude still exist in Egypt?
Oh, absolutely. Do you know that the Dhimmis, when Islam entered Egypt, they wanted to collect the tax as a penalty from Christians who wanted to keep their Christianity, and they sent it to Mecca and Medina. They were taxing Egyptians for staying Christian, and the population of Christians is steadily being reduced in Egypt, and they practiced dimitude and paying the jizya in Egypt from the day Arabs conquered it until the late 19th century when Islam weakened and the British and the French conquered the Middle East, and that thanks for the British and the French that they stopped that practice. And now that the British and the French left after in the late 50s, in the late 40s and 50s after World War II, and steadily radical Islam is returning with vengeance. And absolutely, the Coptic Christians are being liquidated now. And Europe, instead of bringing in the Christians of the Middle East who are in horrible conditions, they are bringing in Muslim refugees. I just don't understand. I don't understand the West. Why aren't they rescuing the people who are being liquidated and killed and humiliated on a constant basis?
So, and this is the other thing. I think they missed this concept of what jizya is supposed to do too. It's supposed to protect you so they don't kill you. Basically, going to kill you if you pay that tax.
That's the jizya.
So as long as the Coptics are not paying that tax, it's fair game for any of the Muslims to kill them. That's
exactly the whole concept. Islam believes that all of humanity that are not Muslims are the personal enemies of Allah. And if you and a good Muslim is the one who kills them. And if you don't convert to Islam, you have to buy your life. You have to buy your life.
So is there something now in Egypt that keeps Christians as a second-class type citizen, or is that kind of social? I'm sorry?
Sharia law is the law of every Islamic country, whether the leader likes it or not. Because any leader who rejects it openly will be killed. And it's coming to a neighborhood near you, here in the West. In Islam, the God of Islam wants to conquer earth to Islam. And in Christianity, the God of Christianity, he already created earth. He doesn't need to conquer it. He doesn't need to tell his followers to go kill people to conquer the earth. The kingdom of God is not of this world. It is Allah in Islam that, Allah and the state are one. And the Islamic State has to conquer the rest of the world that is non-Muslim for Allah's sake. So this is pure 101 Islamic law.
Some people, here's a question for you that I have, and you're well versed in Islamic law, so you'll be able to figure this one. I'm love to hear comments. There is a question in the world right now: is if they kill off the Caliph of the Islamic State, will that stop terrorism from the Islamic State?
No, because Muslim leaders who believe in Sharia survive. The ones who don't are killed. So you can kill one, and the next one is going to pop up. It's just like Osama bin Laden. You kill the Muslim Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda pops up. You kill Al-Qaeda, ISIS pops up. It is Islam. We cannot, it is the Islamic doctrine. What I'm talking about is Islamic doctrine. And no one leader can destroy it without being killed. And that's why, American presidents, when they bring in the Palestinian leaders and the Israeli leaders, and they take a Photoshop and they, and they smile in front of the camera. Oh, I did a peace treaty. The Arab leader who signs the peace treaty, if he's sincere, he's going to go home. As he's landing in the airplane, will be shot.
Well, Yasser Arafat made a treaty. I still remember the Camp David Accords, where Yasser Arafat signed a treaty. He went on the air in Arabic. He told everybody certain terms that told everybody, well, this is until we become stronger, just like Muhammad did. And then we'll come back and kill them all. This is what he said in Arabic. But he smiled and lied to everybody else.
You know the treaty that Obama did with Iran? It's limited to 10 years. You know why? Because under Sharia law, no treaty with infidels should exceed 10 years. Nobody knows that it's totally Sharia compliant, that treaty with Iran. And
I look at this treaty as insane.
It's totally insane. And, I just don't understand. Why are the American people prevented from knowing the truth by their media? And that's why I thank people like you who are at least giving some information to the American people.
Well, my hope is that this year I get to publish 2 books. We'll see. I went back to school. My first one I'm going to try to get out this year. I'm going to see if I can get someone to pick it up and put it in teachers' hands across America. Basically, it's everything. I'll send it to you. I'll send you my first draft. I'm done on. And my goal is it's what every social studies teacher should know about Islam. Using Islamic sources, not smoke and mirrors, the actual factual material that tells the truth, instead of saying things like, well, here's a picture of the dome of the mosque. This is where Muhammad ascended into heaven, without telling them the truth that this is where Muhammad rode an ass by the name of Barak.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, come on, in a dream? We got to tell the truth, and our
kids
are not learning this.
Fabricated. This whole story was fabricated maybe 100 years after Muhammad died. How do you know
regardless, it's a dream. How does anybody actually know where somebody else's dream took place?
Everything is fabricated. It's all fabricated to get legitimacy. 100 years after Muhammad died, they went into Jerusalem and built a mosque on top of that temple, and they had to find an explanation.
Actually, they destroyed a church to build it. So it wasn't just on they actually tore down a church, or did they?
Of course.
Yeah, and this is that practice you're talking about, and it's recorded in Altabari's histories, but it's insane. All this stuff that we're talking about, it's in the Muslims who actually could write, that did write histories, either afterwards or whatever, talked about this, and this is because I'm in New York State. This is part of my insanity that I'm dealing with. Altabari histories are published by the State University of New York. We call that the SUNY system in New York State. The funny thing about that is we tell the opposite to students in high schools in New York State. We tell them Islam spread through cultural diffusion. That's what they're required to answer on their Regents exams. Well, at the same time, the SUNY system, the State University of New York says, publishes Islamic conquest histories by Muslims. And so you lie to the children, but give the graduate people the truth. This is insane.
It's all about conquest. It's all about Allah and the states are one. It's all about the caliphate. It's all about putting the whole population of the world under Sharia law. It's all about, instead of government serve the people, under Islam, its people will serve the government. every morality that you grew up with in America will be destroyed by Islam, because you are the servant of Allah.
And that is their belief structure, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Coexistence with Jews and Christians are forbidden.
I think one of the things we need to do. I think one of the things we need to do is go back to one of the things my pastor keeps talking about, how God gives us simple answers. Well, sometimes the answer is simple, and here's
Absolutely.
the truth.
Very simple. You're right.
So here's a simple answer. What was John Adams' response to the Barbary Pirates? What was
exactly.
He created this. We think about, what did they do? They created a navy and what became the Marines. That's why that song goes from the shores of Tripoli. Come on, people.
Exactly.
Let's go back and we need to be taking a military response to them, not a political response. Let's not do some namby-pamby thing. Let's get the truth out and recognize it. Yeah, religion. This is one of those things where I say that Islam is not a religion. It's a political entity masquerading as a religion. And this is, they have laws, they have the thing we can truly say about this is the only
religion. They are anti-Bible. Islam is the epitome of it was created as a rebellion against the Bible. And that's what my book, Wholly Different. I wish if you can send me your address, I can have my publisher send you a copy of the book.
I'm going to send you a copy of mine. I'll send you a signed copy of mine. We'll exchange addresses later. I'm excited for hearing another excellent person working on things. This is one of the things I look at. In the Christian world, we would say, I think it's funny because I'll meet people who go to different churches, and what kills me and makes me laugh is a lot of those churches, you'll hear pastors in different churches talking on the exact same topic on that same Sunday, and I think that's hilarious. I do want to give you a few minutes to talk about how people can find you and follow your work, and tell them about your books on Amazon before I let you go, because I want to make sure they know how to follow your work.
Well, I'm on Facebook, Nonie Darwish. My name's to be spelled is Nonie. Darwish is D as in David, ARWISH. And my brand new book is called Wholly Different, WHOLLY, Different. Why I chose biblical values over Islamic values. And I've written 4 books. They're all on Amazon, on all the bookstores. They're, and they can reach me on Facebook. I don't have a website these days because I was so busy. It's so backlogged, and because I was just in a tour for my book. But I'll be happy to respond to anybody on Facebook.
Oh, thank you. Really enjoyed having you on. I just hope that God continues to bless you and just continue to get the word of God out, the truth.
Sure. One thing I want to add quickly, if possible, that Islam is not as powerful as we think. Islam is rotting from the core. Islam is self-destructing right now in the Middle East. They're killing each other. And what is the West doing? Instead of just leaving them to figure out their own problems by themselves, they're absorbing all the refugees and giving Islam a lifeline. They're giving Islam new respectability. They're giving Islam new hope to stay and come and change us here. Come and conquer our biblical values. So really what's happening now is not as much as the power of Islam, because Islam is being destroyed by itself. It's self-destructing. But it is the weakness of the West. Not the military weakness, but the moral weakness and the West is not believing in itself anymore. And that is the problem.
I agree 100%. The chat room, we've got numerous people in the chat room. I'm just going to list them off. So they wanted to thank you for your time with us. We have
God bless you. God bless
Bigfoot.
you.
We have Bigfoot, Bob Evers, Doc DLB, Golf Dogs, Luchadora, Kel Fritzy. She does a show also on here on Smoke, Southern Sense Talk Radio. She also does a wonderful show. And then we have Gotti, who is visiting, and he does a show also, but he's on with, I cannot think of the name of the show, Danger Zone. And he's an excellent, Gotti Edelman, another great host. Thank you very much. I hope to have you back in the future. I want to read your new book and have you back on when we talk about that. Okay.
Yeah.
God bless.
And
Thank
if you
you.
want to reach me by email, I'll send you.
We'll exchange addresses, and I'll send you a copy of my book. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
Wow. I knew it was going to be a good interview. I was kind of excited. This article, I call it explosive. I think I'll tell you, there's two people right now that I have a lot, I've been listening a lot to, and one is Max Zed, who's on tomorrow nights. We talk a lot offline, and listening to, I do a ton, excuse me, I do a ton of reading, an awful ton of reading. And when I pick up something by Nonie Darwish and mention some of the things somewhat that Mac and I have been talking about, it's mind-blowing. Some of the stuff we've talked about is just fascinating. So let me tell you, part of this means you guys should be listening to, if you get a chance, to listen to all the great shows on the Global Patriot Radio Network. Tomorrow we have Max Zed. Please give a chance to listen to him. He's the one that should be called doctor, if you ask me, because I'm still learning a ton from him. I'm working towards one, maybe. Towards one, we'll see. I am now a student at Henley Putnam University, maintaining a 4.0, and I'm just all excited. I've never been a 4.0 student, and I'm going to see if I can maintain it. We have on Friday night, Friday morning, I should say, Dr. Carl Goldberg, The Logic of Islam. Now, if you listened in, you'll know that's kind of an illogical statement, but it makes people listen. So that's kind of a funny name. Going on, Saturday, Usama Dakdak. Oh, wow. You got to here's another man who is from Egypt. These two could probably sit down and tell you stories that would just make you spin. Going on Sunday, Damon Rosen is back. I'm so excited. Then we have Monday, we have Vito and Al, Mamma Mia No Sharia, and Tuesday back with Cal. And Wednesday I'm here again. I have possible new guests to talk about some of the issues that are happening in New York State who could be on. I am I'm going to be speaking in New York City coming up, and I'm hoping that does quite well. I have a couple other arrangements I'm hoping for this summer. If anybody's looking for a public speaker, I'm open to taking the arrangement. My goal here is to get the truth out. Contact me through email or through here. You can get a hold of me. I'm willing to go any place. I don't charge much. I look for cost of travel. That's my biggest thing. I think God can take care of the rest. That's the kind of mighty God I serve. And thank you all. Thank you all for listening. This has been an outstanding show. It's been kind of exciting. I might have twice the news next week because we've had such a wonderful, wonderful guest today.